Unlearning imposter syndrome. So, today, are you willing to choose that you are exactly who you are created to be? That you have amazing value and worth? That you can receive that? Because without answering that question, it's literally nothing that I can say to convince you. I think us as Black women really struggle with imposter syndrome because we know that we work hard, we know that we get ish done, we know that we are the most educated in the room, and yet we feel like an imposter because we're rarely affirmed for the hard work that we're done. We're rarely congratulated. Um, we always feel like we have to show up 10 times harder, that we have to be on all the time for anyone to really recognize all the work that we do. And so when we show up in the room, rather than feeling this overwhelming pride and knowing what we bring to the table, instead we hesitate to believe that we bring anything to the table. And when we finally are praised for the fact that we do amazing, magical things, a lot of times we have a hard time receiving it. We have a hard time believing that someone truly is grateful for us being in the room, grateful for the work and the heart and the things that we put into this. And that just perpetuates this whole idea that we have to keep being strong. It adds to this cycle to keep doing more and more to prove our worth rather than choosing to recognize we've been worthy, that we've had value, that we've had so much to offer the whole time, all along. So, first and foremost, if you've never had anybody tell you this, even if you are stepping from one position to another, doing something very different, no matter what it is, you're not an imposter, not even remotely close. So I watched a really good TED Talk with a woman named Lisa Orby Austin and her husband Richard, and they shared her story about overcoming the imposter syndrome paradox. And I thought it was really interesting because I felt like her story really coincided with the idea of being a strong Black woman, that we never have a chance to rest, that there is never a place where we don't have to be on because she went to work every day, regardless of the fact that she had a PhD. She went to work thinking that someone was going to come one day and take it back from her and tell her that she didn't deserve it, that she didn't work hard for it. And man, I think there's so many of us who have seen ourselves do amazing things, but we're just waiting for the other shoe to drop. We're just waiting for someone to tell us that that's not enough. And the problem with feeling like an imposter is that it guilts us, it shames us, it convinces us, it justifies, especially for us as Black women, to keep working harder and harder and harder and harder, and that we never actually get a chance to rest. And that's how we get to this point where being a strong woman is flipping exhausting. It's tiring. It's literally killing us because we are working ourselves to death. And it's convincing us to deal with the toxicity of different jobs, of relationships, of all of these different situations much longer than we ever should be dealing with it. All of these things are the toxicity that's convincing us to give our lives over, to be a martyr for the benefit of everybody else. And if you've not been around here long, let me tell you, I'm not down for that. I'm down for us actually switching that narrative. I'm down for us seeing that we have never been an imposter, that we don't need to be endlessly strong. And as we let go of those things, we have so much value, so much worth. So, what do I mean when I say we have worth, that we have value? I mean that even if you never did anything but blink your eyes and eat through a tube for the rest of your life, someone is very grateful that you're here. Someone looks at you with love and affection and says, I need you, but says, I want you. And it's not because of the things that you do, it's simply that you just are. It's that you were created, that God had this idea of you and said, this is who I need to put into the world. And not only does God love us, we love each other. And I'm passionate about us figuring out how to receive that. So as I've continued on my journey to quit being a strong Black woman, to stop feeling like an imposter, to recognize the work that I do, the success I've achieved, and the things that I've overcome are not just luck, they're actually me. I've been taking this pause to actually think about and recognize that the wins that I have had are my God given dignity, my worth, my value, all of these things that God put in me from the moment He thought of me, He created me, that they're manifesting, that they're coming out of me because I'm making space to start receiving His love. But it's a journey. It's a journey from disbelief to thinking it in my mind and believing it in my heart. That's right. It's going from disbelief actually starting to believe, to really not just believing in my head, but believing in my heart as well. And so here are three steps that I always come back to when I feel like I am in this place of thinking that I'm an imposter, that I don't have what it takes, that someone's going to figure out that I'm a fraud, and uh, how I actually take some action to stop feeling like an imposter. So, number one, I take a step back and I want to use this in the context of something that's present and coming up in my life. I'm really, really honored that I'm going to be speaking at Exodus Summit. And I remember when I did the pitch, I did two pitches. I said, well, the worst thing they could say is no. And while that's true, I think it was more a defense mechanism to try and distance myself from what they may or may not say. Um, so, what I tried to do, and what I think I successfully did, was I took a step back from what I was trying to do, and I had to ask myself and look at myself and really say, regardless of whether I get this picture or not, what do I offer the world? Like, what are three things that I know when I walk in the room, this is the vibe that I give? Because even if they say no, as long as I can show up in that vibe, I know that I am being me, that I am living aligned in my heart. And if they say no, it's not because of my vibe, it's because it just wasn't a good fit, and that's okay. And it helps me realign to I don't have to perform. I don't have to be in a box to show up because here's what I do. And if you want that, accept it. And if you don't want that, don't accept it. And in this instance, they accepted kind of one of them. Like I said, I submitted two pitches. One I didn't hear anything about, and then the other one, it was I was invited to do it as a partner with someone else. The other thing that I have to say about that is like just because sometimes things don't happen the way that we think that they're going to happen, if we are so caught up in our thoughts that that someone, oh, maybe they figured out that I am not as good as that I'm not as good as I should be, or that I am an imposter. That's pretty much if for some reason we believe that they think that we are an imposter, then everything that doesn't happen exactly how we thought it would happen or how we hoped it would happen then becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So the second thing that I had to do is when things don't happen the way that I think that they will, I just have to acknowledge that that's not a diss towards me. That sometimes it just wasn't the right fit. And that doesn't mean that I did anything wrong or that I didn't have any worth or that I didn't have what it takes. It just means that this wasn't the right time, the right place. And that's okay. So when I step into a room, I really try to set myself up to focus on those things that I bring alive in a room. Now, I think you've heard me say this before. The three things that I like to focus in on when I show up in a room, those things are I know that I am number one, an encourager. Number two, I am wise, meaning that I am someone who learns from my mistakes. And number three, I am an adventurer. I'm a risk taker that, you know what, this could go terribly wrong or it could go terribly right. But either way, I'm going to have a story to tell on the other side. And that to me is fun. That to me is what um, helps me shift my mindset from, oh my gosh, things are going wrong, to, oh my gosh, things are going wrong. And this is going to be an amazing story when it's done. I might be crazy for that. If I am, let me know in the comments. To me, it's a reframe. It is. All of this is a reframe. This is a change of our mindset that helps us receive that even if the world, I don't necessarily believe that the world is against us. I believe that there are forces that are trying to make us think that. But if we start internalizing that for ourselves, then they don't even have to work for it anymore. So you know what? I'm going to stay on the positive side. I'm going to believe that the world is actually for me and that there's only this really small part that's against me. So if I keep thinking that the world is for me, why wouldn't I show up and be myself? Why wouldn't I use these words as a meditation to remind myself that, this is how I show up no matter what the day. And if I'm doing that, I'm living fully into myself, which brings me in to number three. 3 times a week, I recite these words to myself to remind myself who I am, what my value is, what I bring to the table, so that it is an active way of helping me continue to unlearn imposter syndrome, continuing to remind myself of what I do bring to the table rather than focusing on what I don't bring to the table. Because listen, I don't bring everything to the table. I'm not perfect. I don't have it all. I don't have it all figured out. But I know I got these three things a lot. I can do those no matter where I go. And those things have helped me really get grounded into recognizing I'm not an imposter. I'm just a human. I'm just a human. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with being a human. Actually, it's a beautiful thing to be a human. It's a beautiful thing to take the superhero cape off and just allow myself to show up as I am and be grateful for that and enjoy that because that in itself is a vibe. Mm. Even right now, I'm receiving that I am a vibe. And I'm really learning to love that about me. So if you're that person that you think you're an imposter, that you don't have what it takes, and that somebody is going to figure out just how much you're lacking, 9 times out of 10, you've been overworking yourself to compensate, to try to prove your worth, to try to justify it, to convince not just others, but 9 times out of 10, more so yourself, that you have something to bring to the table. And really, the thing is, I don't know that it's really going to matter what I tell you. It's really going to be up to you. So I'm going to ask you yourself, like, what is it going to take for you to stop believing that you're an imposter? What is it going to take for you to reground yourself in your worth, in your value? What is it going to take to bring you back out of that and recognize you've never been an imposter? Instead, you've actually been a high achiever. You've been extremely confident. You've been one of the most compassionate types of people in the world. And you deserve not to just work harder, not to just prove yourself, not to keep going and going and going, but to actually receive that you are amazing. What is it going to take for you to receive that? Because this is not going to just happen on its own. It's not going to happen based on what I say. It's going to happen based on you choosing it. So, what is it going to take for you to choose it? I found that this process of unlearning imposter syndrome really only sticks if you can answer that question for yourself. Um, so, while your husband, your mother, your friends, your children, random people on the street, people that you like, people that you don't like, regardless of what all of those people say, and even if by some crazy pigs fly chance that even the people you don't like come back to you and say that you're amazing, if you don't actually take a second to receive that for yourself, none of this matters. So Today, are you willing to choose that you are exactly who you are created to be, that you have amazing value and worth, that you can receive that? Because without answering that question, it's literally nothing that I can say to convince you. But I am trying my best. Can you tell? I'm trying my best to convince you. So, why? Why am I so passionate about convincing you? Because I've been where you are. I've been that person that I have worked so hard to have someone else recognize that I deserve to be here. Um, but when I finally figured this out, when I finally learned how to unlearn that my worth comes from other people and that it actually comes from me and from God. And when I connected back to those two things deep inside of me in the relationship with God, that's when things started to change. Um, and that's a big part of why I became a life coach and a business consultant. So, hey, I am Rashida, and I am a life coach for Black women, and I help us quit being a strong Black woman, and redefine who we are beyond our job title and become that woman because without knowing our worth and value, all the magic that we bring to this world is dampened. Our light is dull when we don't know just how much we bring to the world because it dampens us. It takes away, it grays us out. And I don't want that for us. I want to see that change. And so on this channel, and I am all about uh, having conversations about talking about topics that help us connect back to who we are, connect back to who God created us to be, so that we can step into building a life that's really aligned with the value and self-worth that God has always put in us from the absolute beginning. And I believe that really is the foundation for us living our life, for living in ease, because he says, he can take our yoke. Like, but we don't let him. We don't know how. We're too busy working hard. We're too busy being a strong Black woman. We're too busy doing all the things. We're too busy doing something that nobody ever asked us to do. And so I love talking about how we can shift that. So if that sounds interesting to you, I welcome you. Thanks for stopping by this video. Thanks for watching, and I would love for you to share it with another person who is struggling to answer this question, who is struggling to unlearn imposter syndrome as well. The more that we come together and we see each other shedding this, I like to call it this layer of mud because I believe that we've had mud thrown at us, and that's what keeps us from seeing our beauty. But as I've learned to take the mud off, I'm helping you take the mud off. And the more that we as a community start pulling that mud away, we get to see just how beautiful we've always been under that mud. That mud never took that away. We just couldn't see it. So yeah, if this video helps you, I would love for you to share it with someone else. And if you want to have a deeper conversation about what it looks like to unlearn imposter syndrome, what it looks like to reconnect to who you are beyond your job title, but beyond the roles that you play, beyond all of these things that make you feel like an imposter, then I invite you to do a 90-minute intensive with me where we can really get down into helping you do a mindset reframe to see you have so much worth, you have so much value, and it really has absolutely nothing to do with what you do and everything to do with just who you are. So, if that sounds interesting to you, make sure you take a second to sign up for a 90-minute intensive. Um, as always, thank you for taking a second to watch, and I look forward to talking with you in the next video.